He pulled me closer to the pack, as if presenting me as a gift. "This is your Luna, you must accept her," he said while releasing my hand. Their eyes continued to stare, making me feel more like an experiment that was getting observed. Tears threatened to fall from my eyes. This isn't how I imagined it would go. But then, a familiar pack member bowed their head. "Luna," Kate said loudly as she bowed her head. Soon, her example was followed by more members, then the whole pack. They were all bowing their heads to me. "Luna," they said in unison. My eyes widened. "Yes?" I looked back at Melanie, Brent, and Grace, and was surprised to see them doing the same. "Christopher, they don't have to." I looked at Christopher and smiled. He was bowing to me too. The hurt that I was feeling earlier was replaced by happiness. I was accepted by the pack and my mate. I couldn't help but giggle. But then the giggling turned to laughter, causing the pack to lift their heads. "Diana, what's so funny?" Christopher asked while cocking his eyebrow. "It's just that. You're all bowing to a half-naked girl," I said while clutching my stomach from all the laughter. Christopher soon joined in and brought me into a hug. "Gosh, Diana, you're so adorable." I continued to laugh as I hugged him back. But our fits, if laughter was interrupted by a familiar voice. "Wow, I like seeing Diana half-naked and all, but what do we do now?" "Wait. Or school?" Alfred asked. Christopher pushed me behind him before releasing a growl. "Shut up, Alfred." Alfred held up his hands up. Okay, geez, I was just wondering." Christopher took a breath before answering. "You guys can just go home. I doubt the teachers were going to go back to school anyways." "I'm talking about you, Mrs. Bookard." A moment later, an elderly woman giggled in the crowd. Then she jumped into the sea of people. "Weird." The pack began to cheer. Then they began to disperse, leaving me, Christopher, Melanie, Brent, and Grace. I guess Kate decided to leave. "I think they don't fully accept me, Christopher." Christopher reached and held my hand. "Oh, trust me, they do. The thoughts I'm hearing right now. They wanted to talk more, but you're, practically naked." "Hey, it's not my fault. Last time I shifted, my clothes ripped." Christopher laughed. "And when was the last time?" 3 years ago." Christopher froze and looked at me. 3 years ago? Yeah, I haven't shifted since my pack was killed." He looked lost in thought, but he finally answered. "There's something wrong with your wolf, no offense, but if somebody doesn't shift that long, their wolf tends to fight for control, and they usually win and become a rouge." I let it sink in. I was supposed to be crazy, gone wild. But for some reason, Sophia never fought for control. Sophia, I thought. What's going on? No answer. I shook my head and turned to my friends, but I was surprised to see Brent and Melanie holding hands. "Do you think they're mates?" I whispered to Christopher. Christopher laughed. "Of course not. Melanie hates Brent. She's never touched him in his life except when she punched him in the hallway this morning." There was a moment, but Christopher's eyes widened. "No way," he said before darting to Brent and tackling him. I quickly ran and caught up with him. "Bro, you're mates with Melanie?" I looked at Melanie and caught her blushing. I couldn't help but giggle. Yeah," Brent replied, looking a bit embarrassed. "Why didn't you tell me?" Holy freaking crap. The two began to wrestle while me and Melanie laughed. Diana," Grace croaked. I turned to see Grace struggling to stand. It was like something was trying to pull her down into the earth. But then the worst thing happened. She passed out. "Christopher," I screeched. He looked up and his eyes widened. He immediately jumped from the ground and swooped Grace into his arms. "Wow, she's lighter than a feather. She needs to get dehydrated, food, and sleep." I nodded. "Then that means we should get home." He nodded and began to walk. I caught up to him and fell into his pace. That was until Melanie spoke. "Oh, I know you guys aren't leaving us." Christopher laughed and dug into his pocket while holding Grace. Then he pulled out his car keys and tossed them to Brent. "Ride my car home? Then you guys can hang out with us." They nodded simultaneously and began to run to the school at inhuman speed. "All right, let's get home and take care of your friend." I nodded, and we both began to walk quickly to Christopher's house. Paul's POV, Diana Jones. She was all I could think about. The way her blonde hair blew in the wind, the way her blue eyes always showed kindness, the way she talked, the way how she acted so real. She was just captivating. That's why I loved her. But how can I love her if I already found my mate? How is it even possible? For some reason, I couldn't see myself with Sophia. She's my mate, but I have to admit, she's cruel. We have our own pack of rouges, but she just treats them like trash. A real Luna would never do that. That's why it feels like we're drifting apart. But Diana, I can see myself with her. I can see us raising our own pups and teaching them how to shift for the first time. If she was my mate, that would be perfect. But I think she still hates me. After that night, who wouldn't? I killed everyone, even my best friend. I thought I killed Diana too. My heart just felt broken. But when I saw that she was still alive, joy overwhelmed me. I shook my head. I shouldn't be thinking about this. Sophia's my mate, and I love her. But why does Diana keep popping up in my head? Hey, babe, I whispered. A moment passed, until Sophia finally answered. Yeah, she mumbled from underneath the bedsheets. I smiled. Her morning voice was so cute. She almost sounds like Diana. No, I can't think about her. I'm going to go for a jog, if that's all right. Yeah, but when you get back, I have some loose ends I want you to take care of. I nodded. Of course. I got out of bed and slipped on a sweatshirt, sweatpants, socks, and some tennis shoes. Then I crept out of our room and out the front door of our small shack. It was morning for sure. The sun had barely risen and the wolves were sleeping by some forest trees. I wonder which ones Sophia wanted me to take care of. I shook my head and began to jog into the woods. I began to pick up speed, and the trees soon became blurs as I ran. I only had one thing on my mind. Diana. I kept running until I was right in front of Diana's wall, the wall she made around her burnt-down village. I remember watching her build it. She wouldn't take a break until it was finished. And sometimes I could tell when she had her feelings, when she would feel that I was watching her from the trees. But she would just ignore it. I stepped inside the wall for the first time and was amazed at what I saw. There were flowers growing everywhere. There was a partially burnt house, but it looked well taken care of. And down a path from it were graves. A lot of graves. Most likely the bodies of her pack. But something caught my eye. There was a large circle of dead grass. I knew exactly what that was 3 years ago. It was the bonfire Diana and I had danced around. That was the first time I realized I actually loved her instead of my mate. But I denied those feelings then. Like a Diana, I called. No answer. I walked to the burnt house and entered. It was cleaned up and well decorated inside, so this is where she lived. Like a Diana, I called again. Still no answer. I began to panic. Where could she have gone? This was where she was meant to be, in a house near me. If she left, no, I can't jump to conclusions. I began to search frantically. I ran around, searched every room, and tore things apart. She wasn't here. My wolf began to grow restless. He even cared more for her than Sophia. Where could she have gone? Douglas demanded. I don't know. Douglas was silent, as if he was concentrating. Then it happened. He took control. I could see what was going on, but I couldn't control it. It was like I was in a daze. Douglas didn't shift, but instead he began running. He zoomed past trees and ran down hills. That was until he reached the edge of the forest where a town lied. He released control and allowed me to take over. Ooh, Douglas, I hissed. What was that all about? Diana's scent came from here. Look around. I nodded. Diana. She was somewhere around here. I began walking along the border, just on the edges of the town, and it was huge. But the weird thing was, the streets were abandoned. Pull, this is a pack territory. I froze. Why would Diana be with a pack? Did someone take her in? No, I can't think like that. I continued to walk until a soccer field came into view. A group of teen kids were walking away, leaving a small group behind. But these weren't normal kids. They were all wolves. I stared at the group of kids left behind. A scrawny girl that looked partially familiar. A girl in a t-shirt and jeans holding hands with some guy, and in front of them with their backs turned to me was a blonde girl that seemed to only be wearing only a jacket. She was holding hands with a tall, muscular guy. Must be mates. They turned their heads to each other and seemed to be talking. But a moment later, the guy turned and darted away from the girl and tackled the other guy. Then the blonde girl ran after him. That's when my heart skipped a beat. I recognized that hair, that face, and those eyes. It was Diana. My Diana. But she was half naked and wearing a jacket. She stopped next to the girl who was recently holding hands with the other guy. Then they began to laugh as the two men began to wrestle. But then she looked at the scrawny girl. The tiny little thing was struggling to stand. But then she collapsed, causing Diana to screech so loud that I could even hear it. Christopher, the man that she was holding hands with, responded by jumping from the ground and swooping the skinny girl into his arms. He said something to Diana and they began to walk away. He was walking away with my Diana. A small growl erupted from my chest. At first I thought they heard me because they turned towards me, but they just began to talk to the other couple. The guy, who I'm guessing was Christopher, dug through his pocket and tossed the other guy some keys. The couple dashed away while Christopher and Diana walked side by side, away from me. Anger filled me. He was taking Diana away from me. I ran back into the woods and began to run at top speed. Then I stopped and punched a tree as hard as I could while releasing a painful scream. He wasn't going to take her away. I wouldn't allow him to. That's when the idea came to me. Douglas, I muttered. Beat me up. I could feel my wolf snicker. With pleasure. Douglas took control once again and ran at top speed. But he wasn't dodging anything. He kept crashing into trees, bushes, and thorns. I could feel pain engulf my body. Perfect. He released his control, and I dropped to the ground, panting. I looked at my ripped clothing and now bare arms that were seeping with blood. I looked like I was just attacked by someone or something. I smiled and got back to my feet. Then I began to dash back to my pack. I dashed through the trees and jumped over one of the sleeping wolves, making it yelp and scatter. All of my pack awakened and stared at me in confusion. Then they shifted back to human and circled me, asking questions. What happened? Is he all right? You don't think he was attacked, do you? All right, men, I shouted. Everyone froze and gave me their full, undivided attention. Even Sophia came out of our shack, wearing only a t-shirt and a pair of shorts, while she rubbed her sleepy eyes. I was attacked by a nearby pack. I lied easily. Everyone broke into murmurs. Well then, let's kill them like we did to that other pack 3 years ago. Someone shouted. The pack nodded and murmured with agreement, but I raised my hand to silence them. I have a better idea, I stated. I glanced at Sophia and saw her smirking evilly. Did she know what I was up to? I shook my head and continued. We convinced their Luna to leave. The pack of rouges cocked their heads. What's the point of that? A female voice asked. I smirked. Because an alpha can't live long without his Luna. He'd kill himself, and the pack would go into chaos. They'll all kill each other for the throne. The pack smiled wickedly and nodded with agreement. Then they began to cheer. While they were cheering, one of the females ran up with a wet rag and began to tend to my wounds. But I didn't pay attention. My thoughts were elsewhere. My thoughts were of Diana. I'll get you back, Diana. We'll be happy together in your village. You will be mine. Chapter 15. Diana's POV. Grace lied limp in my bed. Her breathing was faint, and she hardly stirred in her sleep, but I was happy. I wasn't happy that she was in poor condition, but that she was alive. She kept her promise all along, that she would find me. I sat on the side of my bed, watching Grace. I didn't want to look away because I was afraid she'd disappear from my life again. She was my only friend that survived the attack. 2 hands placed themselves on my shoulders. Gianna is here, Christopher whispered. I nodded. We called Gianna so that she could help Grace. I was afraid that if we tended to Grace ourselves, we'd do something wrong and harm her. Maybe a witch could do something better. I turned to Christopher and gave a hopeful smile. Then I looked out the open door to the hallway and saw a smiling Gianna. I smiled back and nodded. She took that as a sign and walked in, making her way until she was right next to Grace's sleeping form. She smiled and looked at me and Christopher. Oh yeah, I can fix her up with a simple potion. But I'll need one thing. I stood up quickly, hope filling my body. W, what is it? I can go get it. Gianna laughed. I'll need an angelic herb. I cocked my eyebrow. Angelic herb? She nodded. Oh yes. It's actually a flower found in the forest around the town. When it's mixed properly, it can be used as a strengthening tonic, she said happily. I nodded and turned to leave. Okay, I'll be right back. Before I could exit my bedroom door, Christopher quickly grasped my arm. Wait, we can have one of our gatherers find the flower. You should stay here, where it's safe. I gave him a reassuring smile and easily slipped my arm from his grasp. It's fine, Christopher. I've been gathering for the past 3 years. I'll be fine. And what would I be safe from, bunnies? He looked like he wanted to argue, but he let it go and allowed me to leave. I gave a thankful smile before running out of my bedroom. I ran through the hallway, down the stairs, and out the front door, greeted by the morning sunlight. I saw some pack members walking up and down the street, but they didn't notice me. Seeing them, though, made me think of the previous event I was in, when I was only in my undergarments and a jacket. I shook my head. It wouldn't happen again because once Christopher, Grace and I arrived home, I quickly threw on a white day dress with some white flats. I was in a white mood. I ran into the street and began to run towards the forest. Surrounding pack members noticed me and bowed their heads. I waved to some, but was in a hurry. So I began to pick up speed. The members soon became blurs as I passed by. I know I have never ran this fast before. I was running faster than the time I was chasing down Christopher to stop him from hurting Grace. So faster than an hour ago. I stopped running when I entered the forest. The forest was a lot more beautiful than when I was arriving to the pack through it. It seemed more at peace. I began to walk, using my instincts to find the right flower for Grace. I didn't know how to find it, but I felt like I was close, if that makes any sense. Diana, Sophia whispered in my head. I nearly jumped when she spoke. She'd been ignoring me ever since we found Grace, then all of a sudden she decides to speak. Talk about being rude. Sophia, I hissed. Why have you been ignoring me? You didn't feel it, did you? You were too distracted, she stated quietly. What? Well, what? I could feel Sophia sigh. I felt like we were being watched. Well, of course she felt like that. We were being watched by the whole pack. Hate to break it to you, Sophia, I started. But we were being watched by the whole pack. Sophia grumbled in my head. That's not what I meant. We were being watched by someone who doesn't belong to this pack. I sighed while I continued to search for the flower. And who would that be? I don't know why, but it felt like. Sophia didn't get to finish her sentence. Why? Because I wasn't paying attention to where I was going, as usual. Instead of tripping on a log and rolling down a hill, I caught my foot in a tree root that was sticking out of the ground. Then I stumbled and caught my balance, but doing so made me cut my ankle on a nearby thorn bush and earning a little blood to seep out. I have the most amazing luck. Son of a poop, I screeched. Well, at least it didn't tear my dress. Sophia sighed, but then went silent. Sophia, don't ignore me again, I whined. No, I'm not. But do you hear that? I went quiet and listened for a bit, but nothing made a sound. Sophia, there's nothing. That's when I heard it. A type of whining sound. It sounded painful, like whatever was making the sound was being ripped apart. I began to walk towards the sound. What are you doing? Sophia hissed. Yes! Never walk towards a strange sound. This is probably why Christopher didn't want us coming out ourselves. I shook my head and continued to walk. The sound got louder as I pushed through some bushes. Then a small clearing opened up, and that's when I saw it. An injured doe lying on the ground. Its legs were sliced, causing blood to seep through its wounds. And there was a huge claw mark across its side, as if a wolf had attacked it. It took one look at me, then its big black eyes filled with fear. It began to do its painful whimper while it tried to stand, but it failed miserably. To be honest, it looked like it was struggling just to hold on to its life. No, don't struggle, I whispered. It'll just make it worse. It ignored me and continued to squirm. What was I supposed to do? Let it die and walk away? Or try to help it as best as I could? I shook my head and slowly approached it, holding out one hand while keeping my eyes on the ground. It seemed to have calmed down. It's whimpering, but it still thrashed around as I was basically towering over it. It's gonna be okay, I cooed. I'll help you. You sure are something, Sophia stated. I ignored her while I looked at the doe. It stopped squirming and looked at me with pleading eyes, as if trying to talk to me. I could imagine it saying something like, "It hurts so bad, please help me." I looked around, searching for a plant. Maybe an angelic herb could help it. I was searching for one after all. Maybe I could get another. Or maybe I wouldn't have such luck. That's when I felt it, a slimy thing on my ankle. I looked down and jumped back with shock. The doe was licking my cut I had gotten from the thorns. I looked down at my ankle and stared at amazement. There was no cut. It was as if it had vanished. Then I looked back at the doe and nearly yelped out of fear and utter disbelief. Its wounds were healing. Right in front of me. The injuries were closing up at an amazing speed that a leopard would be jealous. Its scratch on its side was fully healed, as well as its injured legs. Then it stood up, shaking out its short hair. It looked at me with thanks in its eyes. Then it nodded and strolled off. What happened? Was that deer a wizard thing? I shook my head at the insane idea. Impossible. Then again, humans think it's impossible for werewolves to exist. Well, that was impressive. I tensed. That voice. I know it. I know who it belongs to. It belongs to the boy who caused everyone that was precious to me be killed 3 years ago. It belonged to the boy that played with my feelings. It belonged to the boy who I actually cared for once. I turned around slowly and met with his still beautiful hazel eyes. "Paul," I whimpered. What are you doing here?" He was a couple feet away from me, smiling as if we were best friends. If I had never known what he was like, I would have mistaken him for a kind, loving boy. And that's when I noticed what he was wearing. It sent fear into my body. He was wearing the same clothes he did the night he killed my family. A dark dress shirt with a tie, dark dress pants, and dress shoes. "I've come for you," he said while closing the space between us until he was towering over me. "That outfit is beautiful, by the way. It looks like you're getting married." I was too scared to move. My body was shaking ferociously. He probably came back to kill me, to kill off the sole survivor of a dead pack other than Grace. "Why, you're a killer," I stuttered. "You'd only come for me to kill me." Paul laughed and traced his hand down my cheek, causing me to shudder with disgust. "Why would I kill you?" "Diana, I came back because I love you." My heart stopped. He loved. He thought he had the right to say he loves me after everything he did so far. That's when the memories of that morning came back to me, the morning when I went back to my burned-down pack. He sighed and started to rub the back of his neck. "You know, if I would have just forgotten about my mate when I rejected her, this would have never happened, and I would have fallen in love with you." I shook my head from that memory. He was controlled by his mate. But I still couldn't trust him. "You don't love me," I said with false confidence. "If you did, you would leave me alone." Paul's smile disappeared and a frown took its place. "Diana, I can't forget about you. It's like you're my mate. All I do is think, and you're the one that pops in my head. I can see us together happily. I can see us raising pups. I see myself with you." I took a step back. "Stop it. You killed my family for your mate, and now you say you want me. Stop kidding yourself. And besides, I wouldn't go with you anyways. I found my own mate." Paul scowled. "Yes, and he's the alpha, and you're the new Luna." My body went cold. How did he know that? Has he been watching me the whole time? Was I just something he observed? I staggered backwards. "While he paused. How do you know that?" He shook his head and held out his hand. "It doesn't matter, but what does matter is that you come with me." I stared at his hand as if it was an alien. How could he offer me his hand? Did he really think what he did was right? I shook my head and slapped his hand away, but he grabbed my hand with fast reflexes. He didn't pull me along with him. He just stood there with his head hung while he held my hand. "Paul, what don't you get? You understand that you have to do anything for your mate, don't you?" I flinched. Was he really feeling this way? Paul raised his head and looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I didn't know any better, Diana. I thought I had to do that. But then I met you, and I felt stronger feelings for you, and only you." I looked at our hands and slipped mine from his grasp. "I can probably forgive you, but I won't be with you," I stated while looking back at Paul. His face flashed with hurt and anger. "That won't do." Then he ran off, so fast that the leopard would be more jealous of him. I stood there, looking at my hand that he held. I can forgive him, but I won't be with him. Diana, I shook my head. Not now, Sophia. Sophia ignored me. That flower right in front of you is the angelic herb. I looked ahead of myself and saw what she was talking about. A white flower that gleamed in the little sunlight it received. I walked over to it and swiftly picked it. Then I ran back the way I came, wanting to get to Christopher more than anything. Christopher's POV. Diana has been out there for a while, searching for that one flower that would help Grace. I was worried, for both of them. I wanted to run outside and search for Diana, help her find the angelic herb. But Gianna said that she needed to face her demons out there and learn the truth. I didn't know what she meant, but thinking about it over and over again made it sound like Diana was in danger. It will be fine, Gianna stated. She'll come back safely with the flower. I looked at her and narrowed my eyes. You know, something has been itching at the back of my head. You're a witch, so why do you need potions when you can just flick your finger? Gianna smiled. That's true. I don't necessarily need potions, but this will help everything place itself in order. What do you mean? The witch ignored me and looked down at Grace's sleeping form. She's here. A second later, I heard the front door open and slam shut from downstairs. Then I heard the running of footsteps coming up the stairs and through the hall. I looked towards the hallway door and saw Diana standing there, holding out a flower while panting. Here, the flower, take it. Gianna snapped her fingers and the flower appeared in her hands. Thank you, Diana. Now, Christopher, go comfort our Luna. I nodded and gently took Diana's hand in mine. She stared at it with a horrified look, but then she calmed down. Did I scare her? Was she afraid of me? I shook my head and pulled Diana out of her bedroom. Then we walked down the hallway and entered mine. She went over to my bed, a light on top. I smiled and joined her, pulling her close to my chest. You know, she panted, her minty breath fanning my neck as she spoke. It's obvious Grace is going to be staying here with us. I nodded. Of course, I wouldn't want to separate you two. I could feel Diana smile. You know what that means, right? She gets my run. Which means, I'll have to sleep and stay in your room. I looked down at her as my heart began to hammer against my chest. She was blushing and averting my gaze. Gosh, she was adorable. I kissed her on her forehead. I'm fine with that. I want you as close to me as possible. She snuggled deeper into my chest. Good. I began to rest my eyes, even though Diana kept shifting for some reason. It was like she was trying to get up. That's when I felt it. Sparks engulfed my body as my eyes snapped open. She was staring down at me with a crazy blush on her face. I chuckled. If I wasn't so tired, I'd kiss you back. Her blush got even redder. She swiftly went back to my chest and began to snuggle. You're so adorable, I said while resting my eyes again. And you're so cute, she mumbled. I smiled as I held her closer to me. What? Then fell into a peaceful sleep. The only thing I thought of was the kiss she had given me. Chapter 16. Diana's POV. I awoke from my sleep still cuddled in Christopher's arms. Then I remembered, I kissed him a couple of hours ago before we fell asleep. A heated blush crept up my neck at the memory. Why did I do that? How was I even that brave? That was the first kiss I ever gave anyone. Did that count as my first kiss? He didn't kiss me back, so why did I feel like a dragon was raging in my stomach? I shook my head of that thought and began to struggle to get out of Christopher's arms. But I failed miserably. It was like he was Popeye, as if he ate a whole can of spinach and became super strong. Wait a minute. Could he possibly be? No, what am I thinking? Christopher can't be a fictional cartoon character. I giggled as I tried to push myself away from Christopher. Release me, you stubborn bull. I sighed and began to scan the room for anything that could help me get out of Christopher's arms. That's when I saw it, a single feather sticking out of Christopher's pillow. I quickly plucked it and narrowed my eyes. All right, soldier, I whispered. Do your job. I dangled the feather over Christopher's nose and began to move it back and forth. At first, he just scrunched his nose, but then Christopher began to squirm on the bed, constantly scratching his nose. That's right, tickle, tickle, tickle. Christopher finally released his grip, and I quickly and stealthily rolled off the bed. Finally, I murmured. I got up from my knees and quickly began to tiptoe out of the bedroom. When I entered the hallway, I closed the door slowly and quietly, doing my best not to wake up Christopher. But when I was done with that, the thought came to me. What do I do now? Grace, Sophia stated in my head. I nodded and made my way to my old bedroom that Grace now slept in. When I opened the door, my eyes widened with shock. Grace, she was all better. She was no longer skin and bones. She looked like she did 3 years ago, healthy. And her cuts and bruises? They were all gone. It was as if a wizard or something in that category had came and healed her. I narrowed my eyes. Could it have been that deer that healed itself in the woods? I shook my head. No, it was Gianna, the pack witch. She used that angelic herb. I stepped into the bedroom and slowly made my way to the bed. Then I sat on the edge of it. Grace, I whispered. Her breathing was at a healthy state. And her skin colour wasn't pale, as it was when she showed up. I smiled when she stirred in her sleep. She was going to need a lot of rest, so I probably shouldn't wake her. I was about to get up off the bed until a familiar red ball of fur jumped onto the bed. Puppy Eric? The pup nodded and curled up into a ball, laying on top of Grace's stomach. Puppy Eric, I hissed quietly. Don't wake her up. Grace stirred a little, but didn't wake. Then her hand raised itself and rested on top of Puppy Eric's silky red fur. I couldn't help but smile. Okay, fine. You can stay in here, as long as you don't wake her up. The pup nodded and continued to lay on top of Grace's stomach, making me smile even more. I finally got up from the bed and exited the bedroom, shutting the door behind me slowly and quietly. Like a Diana. I jumped from fright and quickly turned towards the source of the voice. Alison? That must be why Puppy Eric was here. He didn't know where I was staying, and I left him with her. Alison, I whispered. What are you doing here? The small girl gave a sweet smile and walked up to me. I came to get you. We haven't hung out that much since you arrived. I nodded. Okay, so what do you want to do? Well, she started. Let's go to the park. I want to show you something. I nodded once again.